Hey everyone, I'm going to show you how to install the VEEAM backup for Office 365. For this environment, we do not have an on-prem Exchange or SharePoint server, so this is going to be completely a complete setup for the Office 365 from the cloud. And for our VEEAM backup, we're going to be using the trial version to test everything out. And to get going, first off, before we actually install the application, make sure that you have the required permissions within the Office 365 portal. VEEAM does require that the user account that we're going to tie the application to for the synchronizations have access to the SharePoint farm administrator and site collection administrator roles. And then the same thing for Exchange. There's actually quite a few. You need to have the role management role, application impersonation role, organization configuration role, view only configuration role, and view only recipient role for the account. And for my environment, I have a dedicated hard drive I'm going to be storing all my backups and installation on. You can specify different locations where you want the VEEAM to be installed. I created a separate hard drive of 500 gigs. You probably, depending on your environment, will need more or less. Another important requirement for the VEEAM backup is to have the appropriate ports opened. If you're just doing the VEEAM backup for Office 365, just make sure that TCP ports of 80 and 443 are open, along with 9193 if you're using a proxy. And then also make sure Microsoft SharePoint, if you're using on-prem, that 5985 is open. So when you download the VEEAM backup for 365, you'll get a zip file. So go ahead and extract that, and then you'll get a folder that contains 3 files. So you'll see the VEEAM backup 365, that's the installer to run the backups, and then these Explorer, Exchange, and SharePoint are for restoring the files. So when you're ready, go ahead and run the installation. Then just go through the quick setup, accept the terms, and this is where you can specify where you want to install the application and where you want the backups to be installed. So default's C drive, so I am going to change it to my dedicated hard drive I specified, and then I'm just going to put the destination folder just in the root folder is fine. I'm just going to do that, make sure that all the other ones are like that. Install, okay. So hit next, and then install. Alright, when that's done, go ahead and hit finish. So, since I already have the backup 365 installed, so I want to install the VEEAM Explorer Exchange first. Just quickly run through the steps. I'm going to change this to my VEEAM backup hard drive. And install. Alright, I'm going to do that for SharePoint real quick as well. And then hit finish. After this, I'm just going to hit no. I must have just went through it twice. And that's basically it for the installation. as long as you have all the prereqs for the roles and the ports open and enabled, you should be able to just go ahead and open up the vMicrosoft console. The other one's the PowerShell. So if you want to run this, if you want to set up the backup and repository with PowerShell, go ahead and use that. Otherwise, we're just going to use the GUI. Alright, so the initial launch of the application, you'll have to specify the IP address. Since this is on the local computer or server, we can just use the local IP address with the IP address with the port. If you install this on another server, you would enter in the IP address of that server and then the required port, probably 443, to connect to the console. So go ahead, I'm just going to leave everything default. Make sure the username and domain, if this is on a domain, are entered. So to actually start backing up data, you want to add an organization. And here you can specify what deployment it is. So if you're fully deployed and everyone's already migrated to Office 365, you can choose this, Microsoft Office 365. If you're still in a hybrid environment where you have an on-prem and an Office 365 setup, you would want to choose hybrid, and then on-premises if you're hosting your own Office 365. So for us, we'll choose Microsoft Office 365, and next, just leave the region default. And then this is where you want to specify what credentials are being used in Office 365. So go ahead and enter that. And leave everything else default. And then next, it'll run through some checks. And it'll actually check to make sure that the roles are properly given to the account we just specified. And just hit finish. For organizations, we have our Office 365 database we'll be backing up. And if you want, we can go ahead and create a backup scope. So right click the database organization we just added, and then select backup. And give it a name, backup, just for example. And then here we can specify if we want to back up the entire organization, each user and SharePoint site, so forth, or we can specify specific users, groups, specific sites, or specific organizations if you have multiple data centers. So for mine, I'm just going to back up the entire organization for now. And if you want, you can exclude specific items. Same thing. If you want to exclude a specific user, group, or SharePoint site, do that here. And then the next step is pretty much just default. You can't really modify anything unless you have a specific FTP or proxy server you're using. Likewise, if you have another repository that you want to back up. So just make sure you have a space. Okay. Next. For scheduling options, you can give it a specific time, or you can just set it to daily at a specific time. You can go down to, looks like 5 minutes, or every 8 hours. So it's pretty nice that you can do that constantly throughout the day, or if you want to just do it one time a day, or every work day, weekend, or a specific day of the week. And then if there is any failed backups during the time, you can specify if you want to retry that backup for that user or site a certain amount of times, or if you want to wait before trying to do a backup again of that user. You can even terminate the backup if the backup goes into another backup that's just about to start. You can terminate that current backup so the next backup can go. And then you can just also select run the backup when this is done with installation. So go ahead and click that and hit create, and that's pretty much it. It'll basically just start backing up automatically. So if we click here, we can see the details, and then it also gives you a bunch of other details that if you want to view are important. Otherwise, I can see what current actions are being done at the time. And view the repositories where what proxies you're using for the server. During the installation, when you specify where VEEAM will be installed, you also have to specify where you want the repository to be stored. So since I made a specific hard drive just for my VEEAM backups, you can see the installation files are here, but there's no repository within any of these folders or within the actual folder structure. So in order to do that, you can go into your VEEAM software, select backup infrastructure, and then under backup repositories, you'll see a default repository. And as you can see, it created a VEEAM repository under the C drive, so I want that changed. All we have to do is hit right click and hit add backup repository and give it a name. And leave the proxy default unless you have a specific proxy. And you're going to choose the path where you want the repository to be saved to. I'm just going to create a backups folder for that. I'm going to select that. It'll automatically create the folder for the actual repository within there, and then specify how long you want to keep those backups for. So I want to keep them forever. Just know that if you are limited to the hard drive, you'll more likely run into space issues, so you might want to choose a different retention policy for that. And then when that's done, likewise, I guess if you're specifying a certain day or amount of days you want to keep that, you can actually get the specific days you want to hold on to the repository. So I'm going to change that keep forever for me, and I hit finish. And then what we can do is we can actually go in here and then just right click the default one that was being saved for the C drive and then remove.